Listen. The more I think about it, it blows my mind when I think about when the Bible says everything under the sun is not new. And then when I hear things and people are like, yeah, I'm doing things with animals. By the way, welcome back to the Exchange Podcast. I don't think Thomas knows I hit the record button, but I did because this episode is we are back, baby. All right, 2023.
You want to call it season 2? No.
New year, new me, new us, okay? If you hadn't noticed, the intro, we're nixing that. So if you know anybody who's got a good voice and good talent on their shoulders, go ahead and give us information because we want to get somebody
Let us know.
Exposure to do our new intro.
Yeah, and we will listen to a few, however many submit one, and see where we go with that. But as you said, it is a new year, and a lot of stuff came up at the end of last year. One, I had to have surgery. Two, I was having a lot of issues with vehicles, and in today's economy, it's kind of hard to find people who wanted to work a job. So my car was held up because of that. But I think we're starting to get back on track. I do believe that. And as you said, there's some things that are starting to change. So there's some things around the podcast that we're probably going to do some changing on too. One, we are considering a possible, we're going to look into, let me say this, maybe getting some kind of video to go with it.
Yeah.
And just kind of see what happens there. Just kind of go with it.
Hey, my mom always said I have a face for radio, but you know what? I'm going to prove her wrong. No, my mom never said that to me. My mom was very encouraging, and I'm very thankful for that. A bit of news on my end. Sarah and I got a house.
Awesome.
So we have a home, and, we're going to turn that house into a home. But, it's actually really cool. I'm sure the guys who have all owned homes or own homes understand this. As soon as I stepped in there, I just thought, I need to fix everything.
Right.
Not that everything needs to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things that we need to do to this house. Nothing crazy.
How old is the house?
70s.
Yeah, there's a lot of updates got to be made, but that's typical.
But, it's a nice house, and my uncle who renovates homes, shout out to Brad Wood, he was saying, this is a good house for your first home. You'll learn how to take care of it. You'll learn what needs to be done. And God has been providing immensely with all of that. What really helped our character was that freaks cold storm everybody had to go through because we found out the insulation, there's a level of insulation you're supposed to have. And
that wouldn't have been adhered to in the 1970s.
Oh, dude. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was at an 8. It needs to be at a 32.
Right.
It was cold. But, Sarah and I, we bit the bullet. We handled it. And, we're gonna see where God takes us with that. So the changes aren't just happening in the podcast, but in our lives. The church is going through a name change and whatnot. So, we're very thankful for them allowing us to be housed here in the church.
And another,
So
and that's something else we're reaching out. We're reaching out to people that to come on and be guests. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback over the podcast that we did with the pastors, Chris and Tiffany Ball. And so I think we're going to start trying to reach out to more guests, and we're going to talk across a wide range of different topics. It's not all going to be necessarily Christian or biblically based. One person in particular that I am in contact with that I want to bring on the podcast, she's actually agnostic, and she'll tell you that she believes there is a God, that there's a divine creator, but she's not exactly sure where she stands on that. So, get her on here, get a good open discussion with that going on, and just a lot of good things planned out for 2023.
Let's get into some weird stuff. All right, before we get into the serious stuff, because I think what I'm going to try to do is just bring a little bit of that fun, happy, jovial time to everyone's news. But I was telling Tom as he asked me, so what do you got? And I said, I'm going to talk about the things that that were fun and happy. Lionel Messi from Argentina, finally gets himself a World Cup, stamps himself into the halls of fame and fortune of the greatest football player, we call it soccer, of all time. He's great. He's wonderful. However, on the sad part, the king of soccer, Pele, passed away right before the year ended, right along the same time as the Pope. But we got to see real football and see what it means when we say, hey, it's just kind of not fair to have the SEC go against anyone else, because the Georgia Bulldogs didn't play against a college team.
Right.
They played against a Pop Warner team who really thought, hey, let's just go in with our blind and deaf players, okay? Trust me, I don't complain about these things. I don't have a dog in the fight. But it is strange to me that for the last 10 years, the SEC has won a national championship the majority of the time.
Well, but that's where the NFL comes to pick their players from, is the SEC.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
That's really where they get them.
I just do think that there's got to be a better way of doing the tournament style playoffs. First off, quit disqualifying a team because they lose one game. Oh yeah. And again, I think it's here's what we need. I think just like March Madness, imagine how crazy football would be for their own tournament. You know what I'm saying?
I think it'd be a little hard to do, but yeah.
I think it'd be amazing. I think that'd be wonderful. Start at the beginning of December, end towards the end of January, and I mean, you've got think of the attraction to that, right?
Yeah.
So you have and you can still call them bowl games. You know, it's just each level you get closer and closer to the championship.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if it ended at the end of January, you still got the Pro Bowl to look forward to.
Right.
And you got Super Bowl coming up right afterwards. I mean, football would be on the brains for months. I mean, it'd just be insane.
I mean,
four teams, you know, and then you go on to the champ. It's kind of boring.
I think they need to make it a little bit more like the NFL, two best teams match up. Because, like, for instance, Tennessee Vols were, after they lost to, who was it? What is that team that they lost to?
I didn't really pay attention to college football this year because I just
and then they were disqualified. They got to play their bowl game. But
I did hear Tennessee was really good this year.
They did really well.
I heard they were really, really good. And
I don't pay a lot of attention to college ball at all, but especially coming from Tennessee, I mean, a lot of things. If there's something doing well in Tennessee, I pay attention to it. And they're getting in and out, by the way. They're coming to Tennessee.
In and Out just totally skipped over Arkansas. They said Texas, sure. Arkansas, no. Tennessee.
It's the state. It's the no state income tax. And Sarah Sanders, Governor Sanders, said she's going to repeal that. So hopefully she does, because if she does, it's going to change a lot of things for this state.
Speaking of, you're talking about Sarah Huckabee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, right now, she has done away with the
CRT.
Yes. Starting with getting rid of Latinx.
That needed to be gone.
Formal writings of any government. You can use the word.
A lot of Latinos didn't like being called that.
No, they didn't. You want to know what's funny?
I don't know where it came from.
You want to know what's funny? I see a lot of black people bandwagon onto the idea of, oh, you're oppressed, sadness, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Hispanic people, old and young, say, leave me alone when it comes to your CRT or your special words you want to say, because they are a proud group of people, whether they're from Mexico, Honduras, or whatever. Yeah. And they will be the first to tell you, don't call me that.
No.
Do not call me that.
I never heard it until this administration got into office. I don't recall that ever being a term.
You know what? It reminds me of Hollywood, right? Because our politics is downstream of culture, or whatever that saying is. A lot of actors, like young actors, will come out as being bisexual, gay, or gender fluid or whatever before the reviews for their show comes out, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to hide behind the virtue of, you only hate my show because I'm gay, gender fluid, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, it falls apart if anybody on that show comes out and says, no, this was just a bad show.
Well, you're right. It's insurance against bad reviews.
Yep.
But also too, it's just the whole agenda thing.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, why is there such this push to call them Latinx?
It's that we need to be gender neutral.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The majority of Latin languages have a male or female designated to just items.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh shucks, I'm not good at Spanish. I wish I took Spanish more serious in California, because that is like the primary language in California.
Right. It's starting to become very predominant all over the country.
Yeah. But Mesa. I know that mesa is something we use in the English language to describe a certain type of like rock formation, right?
Yeah.
Apparently that's feminine. That word is feminine in their language. So it's like you would put la in front of it instead of L. That's the only thing I know about Spanish. Please correct me, my Spanish-speaking friends. But, I think that's actually very interesting. And, I think more people should be proud of the cultures they're from.
Yeah.
Right after you're proud of being an American. And I've met so many people who are Latinos or Latinas who are so proud to be an American that they bring their best to the table, literally. Have you ever had Mexican food or any type of Hispanic food?
Like real food?
Like real food.
Yeah, I ate it down in Mexico.
Yeah, but then, go to California, go to like certain places in Texas or Arizona or New Mexico for that matter, and they're bringing their best to the table because they're saying, listen, I love this country so much, I'm going to give you the best.
I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You go out west, you go down into Mexico, you can't find really good Mexican food in places like Tennessee and Arkansas. You just can't.
No, you can't. Well, they call it Mexican food, but all we know is that they're putting spicy cheese on it. That's
really all we know. That's really all we know. But I'm glad that she did that because somebody, there are governors such as her, such as Ron DeSantis, who are understanding that we're going to have to stand up, we're going to have to push back. And one of the things that we've been preaching on this, and I say that loosely, one of the things we've been preaching on this podcast is, in fact, the church is going to have to start pushing back.
Yeah.
We're going to have to quit worrying about, upsetting certain people or upsetting certain cultures. We're going to have, because the church has been called to be the salt. We have been called to be that one who changes the culture, not allowing the culture to change us.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of churches who would rather play politics than to change the culture. Yeah, and it's just easier.
I would say that if your culture wasn't founded by Christian beliefs, then the greatest part of your culture was influenced by Christian beliefs.
Yeah.
Because you look at, I'll stick with Central America right now. Man, before Christianity, the world and everybody in the media would like you to believe that they were this utopia thing before white men showed up, right? They were sacrificing children. They were throwing them off of buildings. They were eating hearts. They were doing these disgusting things. And it was because of Christianity, whether somebody used Christianity to trick somebody into allowing them to come over here. Here's the thing. It's really impressive how Christ moves even in the hearts of people who are using his name to be charlatans, right? Because I heard it best put this way.
Well, Paul said, nonetheless, Christ is preached.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I don't condone the conquistadors, okay? Sure, they were like, hey, we'll do this in his holy name, and then they did a lot of terrible things, don't get me wrong. But man, the best parts of Central America's culture was influenced by the church, by Christianity. And they became a very strong family-oriented society.
Right.
And man, that's something people don't, that the enemy hates, that people hate, is a strong family oriented household.
Yeah.
And it's just insane to me.
And again, the conquistadors are like everything else. They're like the Crusades. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that got attached. This is one of the reasons why you don't try to nation build under the banner of the church. A lot of stuff got attached to that because it was a militaristic. It really was. It was a militaristic way of trying to evangelize and spread the gospel.
Sure.
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. It's not what we're supposed to do. And it does not matter what the intent is at that point. It is who gets themselves attached to it. And there's many very greedy, selfish people, excuse me, that attach themselves to such movements for their own gain.
It's kind of like this virtue signaling.
Yeah.
You said it perfectly. For instance, I think words matter in the sense of context.
Yeah.
When you said trying to build under Christianity, it's not going to work. Here's the thing. You need to build on top of Christianity. You need your foundation to be Christianity, not a banner that flies up, because the banners that you see, I mean, why did we use flags throughout the good old days? You flew a flag on your ship because it notified, hey, that's part of the royal crown,
right,
or that's part of the Spanish Empire. All these different things. You have these banners, and for the most part, how did pirates sneak through things?
Yeah.
They stole a flag. They were underneath a banner, which they attached themselves to, and then boom, they tricked everybody.
Yeah.
But if your foundation is on the blood of Christ, is on the word of God, you can't fake. You can't really fake that. You can't really fake. For instance, our nation wasn't found under a banner of Christianity. It said, let's take this scripture and use it for our foundation for our rights. Our rights were built upon Christianity values, not, hey, we have these declarations and all these things, and also we're Christian. It was some of the founding fathers, surprise, surprise, did not believe that
but
Christianity was a real thing.
Christianity was very it was our society, the founding of our country was saturated with Christianity,
right.
and we were never intended to be a Christian nation, but that we were intended to be a Christian Christian representative republic. Meaning that we were never a Christian nation because we never had a state church.
Right.
Because the founders had to deal with that, dealing with the Church of England.
Yep.
They didn't want that here.
No.
But they did want not just freedom of religion, but Christianity was was where they realized, as they say in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that each man is created equal with certain inalienable rights
granted to them by their
creator. And a lot of people try to say, well, yeah, but that was just for wealthy white people. No, it wasn't, because there was a lot of first off, when they say that, they never meant that as an individualistic thing as much as they meant that each place had proper representation. And that representation, because one of the things that led us to war with England was taxation without representation.
Yeah.
So there was, it didn't matter what your race was, what your culture was. There was a lot of people that were starving and not doing well, and cotton farmers and tobacco and I'm not even going to say farmers. They were cotton pickers, as they used to say. So it was always understood that equality, to bring everybody up, you had an opportunity, but the situation may not be ideal for some people, and it didn't matter what the race was. So a lot of times we're like, well, yeah, but it was built. This nation was designed for white people. No, that's not what it was designed for. It was designed because, for instance, a lot of people, there were a lot of women that voted during that time too. We always hear that women never voted until women's suffrage. Well, that isn't true. There were women who voted. There were special reasons that permitted them to vote, but the founders never intended for women not to be able to never vote. So it's like you go back and you read the original Declaration of Independence, the original one, and the founders laid slavery squarely on the shoulders of the crown. Yeah. That's where they laid it, because they wanted to get rid of it then. But the reason they didn't, and for better or for worse, and this is a whole different debate, but the reason they didn't go with the original declaration was because they needed, it was South Carolina, I believe, to be on board with the revolution. And they knew that if they went that far, they weren't going to get them. And, that can be debated, like I said, for better or for worse. But one of the things that I think a lot of people in our day and time is they want something instantly done, just instantly done. And unfortunately in life, nothing is instantly done.
I'm sick and tired of the, oh, well, if they were really good, they would have gotten rid of slavery. Okay, well, if we were truly good, then people would stop denying the fact that babies in the womb need to be protected. Yeah. Because here's the thing. Slavery was terrible.
Yes.
Slavery was the worst thing the United States perpetuated for as long as it did. But United States said, hey, this is bad.
Yeah.
And eventually agreed, let's just stop doing this.
Right.
You want to know something, and I love when people are like, oh, well, that's a whataboutism. Who cares? It's a fact. You want to know who didn't say slavery was wrong? The Middle East. Mm-hmm. Okay? You want to stand up for people in the Middle East, and you want to say things like, oh, this is okay. Thomas, I don't know if you know this, but did you know that the last World Cup that just took place was built on literal slaves? And by literal, I mean they died and they still poured them in with the mortar to build the stadiums in Qatar.
No.
So we're talking about, hey, the United States sucked because it wasn't too long ago that we had to fight for civil rights. You want to know who's still stuck in the stupid past? Mm-hmm. All right?
Yeah.
Anybody who listens to the Sharia law, anybody who says, that's haram of you to speak against Allah's will. I don't care, all right, what you think about the United States. But we're doing pretty dang fine when we can have multiple different transgender people running this thing who like to steal people's suitcases and whatnot. When we have different origins of backgrounds in our Congress, when we have different ideas in our Congress, every single time I hear about how America is doing such a poor job of keeping in touch with how things are going, you know something? No, we're not. Everything here isn't perfect. It's great. All right? It's not just good. It's great.
Right.
It really is. Listen, this is the only country you'll find fat, homeless people. Okay? I want the homeless problem to be gone. I wish it was eradicated. But you know something? It doesn't seem that bad when you're not sticks and like a twig on the side of the road begging for money. You look fit, you look healthy. Someone's going to give you food. Okay? I heard it best from a dude, no education in terms of no formal education, probably graduated from high school, working for himself, doing pretty well. And I asked him, why didn't you give that guy $1? He said he just doesn't want to work.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I've seen that guy out there for the last 10 years. He's got no track marks, so he's not on drugs.
Yep.
He doesn't have any signs of being an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. I know what that looks like on a person. These people just don't want to work. And I said, what do you mean? It's kind of hard to get a job. He says, is it? Go to Walmart right now. They're offering, at the time, $14 an hour.
Yeah.
He said they're offering $14 an hour. You can work up to 80 hours for 2 weeks, however, whatever. And he said, they just don't want to work. All right. I want money. They just want money.
Yeah. And many of them have found a niche that makes more money.
Sure. And he said, I want money too, but I'm going to work for it because in the end, and nobody likes to hear this, and people stop taking advice from people like Hassan Piker. Right. Because people like Hassan Piker, who worked for the Young Turks and now has all this money because people donate to him because he says the things that sound cool and he dresses up like a woman and he's living in the times and he's doing all the cool things that everybody wants to see. A nice 6-foot tall man with long hairdo. And the thing is, I'm saying this because he's not the person who should be championing the idea of you're a wage slave, man. If we just, go communist, if we go socialist, if we do this, it's like, listen. Don't listen to the guy who got a job because of nepotism.
Yeah.
Don't listen to the guy who sits on his butt for 10 hours a day, his words, to stream and complain about how things are. You people, what do you mean you people? You people who sit here and say, oh, I wish my life was better. I want to listen to this guy tell me why my life sucks because I'm a wage slave. Listen, guys, it's possible. I'm 28, my wife is 24, and by the grace of God, because it wasn't just us, but by the grace of God, we did something that most people my age would say is dang near impossible. We bought a house. oh, but you're into a contract that's so. It's like, okay, so this is my house. This is my thing that I get to deal with. I don't have to worry about neighbors that are above me or below me. I can host parties at my house and not worry about a noise complaint because it's my house. I can do things with my cars.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Lord willing, a kid on the way. Lord willing, all of these things. And you want to listen to a dude who, hey, you know what? I'll admit it. If you ever go, Thomas, I would encourage you and everybody else who's listening, those of you who do listen, go watch Hassan Piker. You know what he does for 10 hours a day? Again, his words. He sits, he watches, he watches the news, he complains about the police, he complains about minimum wage, he complains about wage slaves, in quotations, I say that. And I know I'm on this rant for the last like 4 or 5 minutes, but I'm going to be done here and I'll pass back to Thomas. But the thing is, guys, go watch him. Do you really want to take advice from a guy who's just sitting there and doing something for 10 hours a day, which is just sitting on his butt, having his mom bring him food, tell you that we need socialism in a $1 million home?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can't get that $1 million home in socialism. I have so many people from the Eastern European side of the world who tell me, why do people want communism?
Yeah.
Why do people want this? I got people from South America coming up here telling me, oh, yeah, no, socialism and all that crap? Yeah, no, sign me up for America. All right? These people are fleeing those types of countries, and you want to put 300 million people under that type of regime, that idea? Don't get me wrong. I would love for my money to go to healthcare to help people. But you know something? We all are also the country who's producing the best medicines. We are the country who are producing the best militaries. We spend so much money, not just for us. We spend so much money because other countries cannot get their foot out of their butts.
Well, and I mean, talking about all that, and in 1775, Thomas Paine in the Pennsylvania Journal and Weekly Advertiser wrote, and what he was doing was he was making an argument against slavery. And he writes one paragraph in there. It says, the managers of the slave trade testify that many of these African nations inhabit fertile countries, are industrious farmers, enjoy plenty, and live quietly, averse to war, before the Europeans debauched them with liquors by such wicked and inhuman ways. The English are said to enslave towards 100,000 yearly, of which 30,000 are supposed to die by barbarous treatment in the first year. What stood out to me when I read that was, he talks about them enslaving them through liquors. And many of the people that, like you were just mentioning, that are so much against capitalism, and they almost have this hatred towards capitalism. Well, it's not almost. They have a hatred, a vitriol towards capitalism. But many of them are addicted to such things as pornography. Many of them are enslaved to pornography, enslaved to alcohol. And what they don't understand is it's not capitalism that's doing that to you. It's people that are willing, and you are willing to allow them to control you. Yeah. And those words right there that Thomas Paine wrote in 1775 ring true today, because we have people, go online and listen to how many people, men and women, are telling men about learning to be masculine again, because as the masculinity is ripped out of the society, enslavement starts.
Well, and you bring up a good point, and you take a few hits in football and you forget things easily. So before you move on from that point, the enslavement that you're talking about isn't something people want to admit. But guys, how many of you have spent money on OnlyFans to get a picture of a girl that you'll probably never meet?
Yeah.
That's enslavement. Okay.
Right.
If there's anything that I can say, my life wasn't I wasn't a Christian my whole life. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was enslaved to my sin. However, I got saved around the part where I was making money and my sin the slavery would have taken my money. And I got to the point where I got saved and I found somebody to teach me not to fall into the trap of, hey, you have money, so you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
That's slavery.
Well, that's it. And see, you look at, like you mentioned OnlyFans. That's one of the problems that we have a declining mortality rate in this country, and part of it is because of that. Part of it is because younger people are more. Let me say this: they're satisfied in talking to someone online that they're never going to meet.
Yep.
Instead of actually going out and meeting someone.
Yep.
Which is the normal way of doing it. Boy likes girl, boy sees girl, boy likes girl. Boy goes and talks to girl. She gets attracted to him. They go out on a date, and they get married and live happily ever after.
Yep.
But that is what is being fought against, and part of this slavery that we're talking about is what is destroying the American. Well, it's meant to destroy the family. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And something else that he says here that really stood out that we're seeing happen in our country today. It says. The English are said to enslave towards 100,000 yearly. It says that the African nations were industrious farmers and enjoyed plenty and lived quietly. Look at what's going on right now with our country. We're so engrossed with things like pornography. We're so engrossed with things like
drugs and alcohol.
And going on,
getting on the internet.
Getting on the internet
anything.
and something that let's take the webcam people, right? What do they call it? Webcam, whatever you want.
The cam girls.
Cam girls, okay.
Yes, I know what that is.
I couldn't.
No, I'm not going.
Well, I know what they are. I know what they are too. I mean, it was just the name was slipping my mind.
I get you.
Because I study culture quite a bit, and because I do a lot of speaking in churches, and I'm a minister, so I look at culture, I look at how things are going on, and I was studying this, I was doing this research on Pompeii, the ancient Roman city, that was destroyed by a volcano.
Yeah.
Now this city was so wicked. Excuse me. This city was so wicked that when it was destroyed, they were thinking about going and excavating it. And Julius Caesar said, no, don't do that. I believe it was Julius Caesar.
It was a Caesar.
It was a Caesar. And he said, no, don't do that. He said, that city was so depraved that God did not decide to spare it. So we don't need to go digging it up. What do we do in the United States? We go and we excavate it, right? But they excavate it. And what they found was Caesar was not wrong when he said it was depraved. I mean, it just horrible stuff, horrible. Human genitalia all over the streets, out in the open.
Right.
There were rooms that people would go to, and there would be these women that would go in that the men would pay for, and just watch the men pleasure themselves.
Right.
That is what we're doing with the cam girls and different things of that sort.
Guys, that's just,
as you said earlier, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, it's
but
true.
We're enslaved to this stuff. Yeah. And one of the biggest things that made us that was that little, what is that called? The CVV or whatever that is on the back of a credit card.
Oh, the CCV.
CCV.
Something like that, yeah.
Have you ever heard how that got started? Now, I could be wrong on this because I didn't, but one of the things that I read years ago, and if I'm wrong, we'll do some research on it. But the guys that created that pitched it to like every company, and they couldn't get anybody to take it, except the porn industry did. And so what they found is these guys would enter their credit cards and with that CCV number,
the security code,
and then they just keep downloading. And what they noticed was that the porn industry literally, their revenue increased by billions of dollars.
Oh, I got one for you too. You know why we have VHS instead of like the one before VHS? I can't remember what it was. It was before my time. Mm-hmm. But the reason we have VHS is because the porn industry adopted VHS first, and then it just boomed.
Because that's what happened.
Because everybody wants to see everybody. Here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing about the human brain. we want to see the most depraved things. How do I know this? When when the internet was in its like infancy in the early 2000s, you could say you can't tell me you can't tell me that there is just this sick twisted fascination with depravity, because Thomas, I was about like 11 years old,
right,
when I saw my first pornographic like image, and it was on the internet. All right, it wasn't 3 years before that, about 3 or 4 years before that, I was watching people get beheaded, decapitated, shot in the head, flayed alive, because that's and you know, the first time I watched it as a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this is gross. But that flipped the switch of, yes, it was gross, but you want to see it again.
Right.
And that's how you can ask my friends. I know a few of my family members who grew up around that time with the internet know what I'm talking about. I know a few people from college. We would sit and talk, and it was like, hey, have you ever seen that video of the camel exploding? And people were like, oh, yeah, I remember.
And then they go and watch it.
Or they go and watch it. And they're like, oh, I got to go watch that video again. It's like, why? The question is why. The answer is, don't know.
Well, I'll give you, I mean, this is probably something you never heard of. It was done like in the 70s or 80s. There was this series of so-called movies that came out called Faces of Death. And my understanding is it's not real. But back in the early days, a lot of people thought it was real. And they would go and they would rent these Faces of Death. You had to go on the black market to get them.
It was like a snuff film.
Yeah. Now, my understanding is that it was a bunch of stuntmen.
Yeah.
That just kind of got together and they were basically trolling people.
Right.
And so people were buying it. But I remember being a teenager, and, you know, the only way you could go and get a pornographic film was you had to go to some kind of, mom and pop kind of rental.
Yeah.
And they would have some kind of seedy room in the back room somewhere that you had to make the march of shame to, because they still had cameras back then.
Yeah.
And so someone would have to make the march of shame back there, go pick out whatever movie they wanted, and then come and you know, in front of God and everybody, march it to the front of the building. You know what they were back there getting.
Well,
right? So, but you know what? If they were ever caught renting that stuff out to minors, that whole place would get shut down, and somebody was going to jail. But now with smartphones, anyone underage, pornography's at their tips. And they want government to do something about it. I'm not so sure government wants to do something about it for this reason right here. They can control people.
Oh, you can definitely control people. The reality is that I've heard, here's something funny. When I was growing up, I heard, hey, masturbation, super healthy for you. Healthy for your prostate, healthy for you this, that, blah, blah, blah.
It's not.
Listen, even if that was true, it is not worth the mental instability sexually whatsoever.
No, it as a matter of fact, I've given her a shout out on here before, and I'll do it again. Dr. Trish Lee, you can find her on YouTube, and she talks about she's a my words are escaping me, neuroscientist, and she talks about how that somebody who views pornography is getting the same dopamine dump in their brain as somebody who takes heroin. As a matter of fact, I think it's actually more. The dopamine dump's actually more, like 10% more.
Yeah.
And so you think about that, and video games kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
When you consider that, it makes it very difficult to engage in real life.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in society where people they're not engaging. They don't want to engage.
No, they don't.
They look for ways to back out of that.
The joke growing up was, man, I hate people. And then I'm starting to realize, wow, people really do hate people to the point where they don't want to interact with other people. Because the thing is, look, you've heard of Discord, right?
Yes.
I know for a fact that I'm just going to put this out there. I know that you and I know a young man at this church who just got Discord. that needs to be monitored like a hawk, because I've met so many people on Discord, and I can't tell you how many times I've met them. And in a conversation, again, I met them in person, so I'm not comfortable having deep conversations about this with anyone, but it is a red flag that somebody would feel comfortable to bring up, like, so what do you think about the age of consent? That happens so often on Discord, on these websites, because these people can hide behind an avatar picture, a different picture of who you don't know how old these people are. And depravity is so much easier to give into when you think you're in the dark, because when you make that walk of shame, you have to do it in front of God and everybody. So you're probably more often than not thinking, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And a lot of people in the world, because again, sin is slavery. A lot of people in the world would say, we need to stop shaming people for being into things. Listen, I'm into things, but the only person who knows about what I'm into right now is my wife, because I don't need anybody else knowing, because I am not proud if people knew what I like to do behind closed doors.
Right.
And that's how it should be.
Well, I mean, human depravity can go in many different levels. And for me, I've just about gotten to the point where, number one, I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on any of those platforms. And that's a conscious decision, because life doesn't happen on a little screen. Life happens all around you.
Yep.
And, I see, and my honest opinion about this is that the more and more we give over to them, we're doing it through social media. And I, I'm certain the person we're talking about, I know for a fact that what they do on Discord is very monitored.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate thing is many aren't.
Yeah.
And many parents just think their kids are okay. And you can go and find just a bunch of people who go, well, I did this for my kid, but then I found out this was going on, or that was going on. And now there's kids who are being encouraged to go and have sex changes online.
Yep.
And what's sad is some of those parents, not all of them, but some of them are just like, let Junior go and make their decision.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase pink pilling.
Yeah.
It's where you convince somebody that they're like part of the LGBT community.
Yeah.
More often than not, it's usually convincing a young person that they're trans.
Yeah.
And y'all, this isn't me coming up with a conspiracy. This is from people who are transgender, who say it themselves. Oh, I can't tell you. They'll say, I know, I have so many times I've convinced a young teenage boy that he was gay, or I convinced.
Right.
Like, here's the thing, and here's the other thing. This isn't me saying everybody in the LGBT community is trying to convince children, because I've seen a good number.
They have their evangelists. Let's call it like it is.
That's true. But what I'm saying is, I've seen things like queers versus the indoctrination of children.
Yeah.
I've seen people who were like, listen, I lived my entire life in the closet. Just because I'm out here doesn't mean I want everybody to be gay. It's just, this is something I deal with. Yeah. This is my thing.
Right.
And you know something? Let it be just your thing.
Well, I agree with you on that. And but I would say this, if I had kids, there would be certain things that I just wouldn't put. The Bible said in Job said, I will put no evil thing before my eyes.
Sure. Yeah.
And, the gay community, the LGBT community, has never been able to get above 1%. Like, I mean, they're rarely ever at 1% as far as the community. But see, what they're doing is, like you just said, there's many of them that are out there trying to convince people that they are something they're not. And pornography is one of the worst ways to do it. We didn't really intend to get on pornography today. Today was really a free-for-all. Good discussion, but a free-for-all. And I'm not apologetic for that, because I think some things need to be discussed.
Yeah.
And I would tell anyone, look, you better really monitor what you're watching, let alone what your kids are watching, what you're watching. As I quoted, Job said, I will set no evil thing before my eyes. there's so much stuff out there that you can convince yourself of something.
Oh, yeah.
And we have so many people right now that are on medication for anxiety, and then they can't even define what anxiety really is.
Yeah. This has definitely been a great exchange to come back to.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited to see what 2023 has for us. Like Thomas says, we have a lot of things in the works that we want to get done. Those subscribers that we have that have listened to us, and those of you who aren't subscribed but are still listening, because that is still a thing, I would encourage you to subscribe. I appreciate everybody who has prayed for us. One, I appreciate you guys liking and sharing the videos. Everybody on Facebook, man, you've been here since day one before we even went to YouTube.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to thank all of you on Facebook. And I'm going to make this promise to you. We will be more diligent with our uploads.
Yeah.
And we just ask that you stay tuned for what God has to do for the rest of us. Thomas, is there anything else you want to say?
No, thanks for listening. Yes, I'm sorry. Thanks for listening, and thanks for the support and the prayers. I believe I speak for JaVaughn. I know what to say for this for myself. I enjoy being here as much as I hope you enjoy being here with us.
Thank you. You guys have a good weekend, and happy birthday, MLK.